Great. So again, welcome to the SaaS MSP call. It is Thursday, October 20th. And the agenda today is reviewing last week's session. So impossible travel reports using maps and leveraging that to drive more MRR in your business. Ryan Riccardi, our VP of Customer Success, Partner Success, is going to actually tackle that with us today. Then we're going to provide a product update, some new features and roadmap stuff. And then Ryan's going to come back and talk about things that you don't do this. So this you don't do this segment actually are things that we do, but people don't think we do them. And we want to make sure that we clear up all misconceptions about what this platform does. There's a lot of folks that have signed up, that have been with us for a while, and they think of the platform essentially as a snapshot in time of what it did when they signed up, but they don't understand everything that we brought on, within the last, 6 months or even month. So we want to make sure that we're clarifying that for folks and make sure that you're aware of everything that we can do for you at SaaS Alerts. And then Andrew's going to talk sales and marketing enablement. And then we want to pick everyone's brain on some ideas around some webinar stuff we're going to do, and then obviously open Q&A if we have time. So we've been taking it right up to 60 minutes. So that being said, if you have questions as we're going through some of these topics, please feel free to jump in the chat or take yourself off mute and ask away. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Ryan, and he's going to talk through some of our reporting capabilities. Ryan?
Thanks, Jim. Michelle, I'm going to take over screen sharing if I'm allowed to. Yep, perfect. So before I do that, it's great to see everybody. I noticed we have some of our guys that are looking at the product but haven't made a move yet. Andrew's here, by the way. It's good to see you. Which is awesome. I'm excited to have you guys here. I please encourage you to ask as many questions as possible. So the first bit there, what I wanted to talk about is more of I couldn't find a better title for it, a way to leverage some of the aspects of our reporting to help people identify things that are at risk. And one of the questions I've been asked a whole bunch of times by our partners are trying to get it out to more of their base is, what excuse do I use to get them to take a look at what the platform does? Like, why am I doing this now? As basically the question that they're going to ask, or the question that I want to be prepared to answer. Primarily, that seemed to be driven out of a bunch of folks thinking that their customers probably believe I already have some level of capability around this that I don't. And I don't want to open up the door for that question of, what do you mean, like you can't see this stuff or this is news? So there's actually somewhat of a serendipitous and equal parts bad development that happened this year that I don't think everyone is aware of. So I'm going to lead with that and then show what I would suggest that you do with this information. And if you were here last week, this is going to be a little repetitive just in the beginning. I apologize. But if you've never taken the time to look at this phenomenal wall of text that I have up here now, this is Microsoft's terms of use. This is the important part right here. It was updated this year, and a lot of people aren't aware of the update that was made. And it's way down here, about 2.5 feet down in member account, password, and security, where they added a new little blurb. And I want you guys to use this blurb to go to your partners and say, hey, due to this little addition to Microsoft's terms of use, I really think it's necessary that we take another step to ensure your environment is secure. And that little blurb that I'm talking about, you're probably not surprised by this one here. Microsoft will not be liable for any loss that you may incur as a result of someone else using your password, with or without your knowledge. This next one is the one that's scary. However, you could be held liable for losses by Microsoft or another party due to someone else using your account or password. So that's new, that's in there, and that, judging by Brian's leaning forward to look at it, is probably a little bit alarming. Microsoft is now saying not only are they not liable for breaches on your behalf, but you can be sued by somebody who feels like a breach adversely impacted them. So we've had a lot of success going to our partners and users and saying, hey, this is new. And as a result, we kind of want to double check, not relying just on Microsoft's reporting, that the way you're configured is right. Because not only are they not out to help us, they could ultimately allow someone else to be out to get us. So what I want to do is I want to use a tool that's in my tool belt already, run a report, just run some scans on your environment for, let's say, the next 2 weeks, and then we'll reconvene and we'll take a look at your standing right now as far as cybersecurity in the Office 365 environment. So what you're doing effectively is taking advantage of the possibility we give you guys to prospect. You're going in, you're entering their GA creds, or you're having them enter their GA creds, and you're just going to run the report. And I don't want to get ahead of myself because and then you don't do this thing is one thing that might come up as a question, but you're just going to go ahead and run the reports, not necessarily ticket into your PSA or take action on any of those things while they're not paying, but gear yourself up to be able to come back to them and say, hey, this is what we're seeing, and this is what's alarming. You guys are all based in the United States. However, I've got successful logins in other countries, and not only in other countries, but other countries that we're not super keen on seeing successful logins from. These are risky. So there's a couple of bits around your cybersecurity stature that we would like to address. Multi-factor authentication is not enabled on these accounts. I can see that because we have a report for that as well. And you can go in and just leverage these reports to say, hey, here's some things that we need to improve. And now that we know that we have this list of concerns, I'd really like to monitor this on a go-forward basis. It's not expensive. I'll be able to provide these reports to you month over month and let you know where you stand. And we can ensure that we're doing everything within our power, monitored by a third party outside of Office 365 to protect you from bad actors and from potential litigation with Microsoft. That messaging has been very, very easy to convey. And since the initial introduction is not even asking them to pay anything, they've all gone for it. The pickup rate for the people that we've done this with is just over 90%, but every single one of them has said, yeah, let's go ahead and see the reports. And every single one of them has had something in there that was alarming. And it's usually around the MFA or the risk dashboard showing where people are signing in from and where we're seeing risk from. Any questions on that? Or do you guys have a concern that that might not be as easy as it has been so far for us?
Yeah, we would love to hear if you guys,
Andy's raising his hand. What do you got?
So do you have this as like I see this as a go-to-market strategy. Do you have anything that we can take instead of just this recording and reword it and go to town with this? Because I could see this as a LinkedIn given cybersecurity month as a post. I could see this on a YouTube kind of explaining how Microsoft has changed their terms of service. You should be aware type of thing.
That is an excellent question and a great idea, Andy. Haven't built that yet, but I will set about to working with Michelle on that immediately. Much like our coverage extension notification, if you guys aren't familiar, we'll make that available. It'll be co-brandable. We'll write something up, and then Michelle, maybe you and I can brainstorm on something that's more in a video format, walking through, here's the terms of use if you care to read it, and I'll post that link in the chat. And then here's the steps that we would suggest. But no, thank you, Andy, for that. We'll work on it.
Yeah. That being said, Ryan mentioned the coverage extension notification. We do have something that's written up that some of our partners have been very successful with. Ryan mentioned the 90+% take rate when they use it. And actually, Ryan, now that I'm thinking about it, we should actually put a link in there to the new Microsoft terms of use. But one of the things that we're so comfortable with now in terms of people using this methodology that we actually have something called the MRR guarantee. So we guarantee that you will add a certain amount of managed, depending on what your customer base looks like and how big it is. We have a formula for it, but we guarantee that you will add a specific amount of monthly recurring revenue within 60 days. And if you don't, we pay you $1,000.
Jim, if I could take Andy, I love what Andy said. Andy, what are your thoughts taking a step further? And if that kind of content was created, doing a lunch and learn, for prospects and customers combined. I know, without mentioning MSPs specifically, they do things like this, and like that kind of enablement and education gets a lot of people.
Well, see, I target healthcare, Andrew, to be very specific. I think going after and talking to a local admin group for practice admins, or for a local security awareness with, hey, we're moving to Microsoft 365, we're going to be safe now. Well, yeah, sort of.
Yeah.
Kind of a thing.
Yeah, no, it's like if you were focused on law firms, right? Go to a chapter where, all the legal administrators get together. So, I think it's a great thing that you could do for your vertical. And yeah, absolutely. And obviously for yours specifically, because you could pull in maybe even a breach attorney into that. And I've got a great one that would probably do the webinar with you. Because for you guys, it goes beyond just there's an incident. For you guys, now we get into actually having to do, pulling in from a reporting and, tremendous fines if there's any type of healthcare data leakage. So
I just wanted to express one more thing. And for those that are difficult, I'm dealing with customers that say, hey, look, we only want to pay so much per month for the service. And the response is, well, you're asking me if I was a patient of yours to change my behavior because it's not healthy for me, or, I've been exposed, and that the world is really changing rapidly. How do you wish to compromise your security in this case? So I think there's different target messages based on who we're dealing with.
That's a great point. That's a great comeback. I love that.
Really good stuff.
I have a question about the MFA report. Don't you need a certain level of Microsoft license for that to actually run? Because a lot of my customers are business standard and they don't have any, I think it's a more Azure Premium or something like that.
It's a P1 license for the MFA report.
It's a what?
It's a P1 license for the MFA report.
Right. So I have a lot of business standard. So that's a little bit of an issue with me, except if I want to upgrade and eat a license, I guess.
Yeah, and that's
licensing is very inexpensive, Larry. It's like $2 a month, and all you need is one.
Yeah.
Add it into your costs.
Yeah.
So I do have to make sure that I make it clear that that is not the SaaS Alerts position. It's true. A P1 license as it stands right now does authorize you to run these reports and pull them. But in the same document that I'm in right there, at some point, Microsoft may very well come back at you and say, hey, you're leveraging the capability of P1 with one license, and you have to have it across the board.
Yeah. So look, they haven't caught on to that yet. Larry, to your point, or Andy, I think it was Andy's point. They haven't caught up with people that they haven't been hitting people, saying that you have to have all P1 licenses across the board for every licensed user. But they could, for sure.
Well, let's be really clear. So Microsoft is aware of that loophole, and they do call it out in their licensing documents. They have just chosen forever not to enforce it. So, and for all of you, we're giving you the party line, the required party line. We can't encourage you to I wouldn't say violate, because it's not a violation that they press, but just be aware that Microsoft does know about it. They talk about it in some of their posts and documents, but they don't seem to care. And most of our MSPs that have P1s on their customer organization tenants only have a single P1 license, and that gives them all the reporting they need.
Okay. And on a more positive note, to the point you made, though, Larry, the MFA report is the standalone, and what I just went over that wouldn't be available without that P1. The reports with the maps that show what countries folks are logging in from and how many times they've had failed logins in the month, all of those are still available to you, and quite effective. I do love the MFA report just to indicate to people that there are holes in their security, especially around folks that have MFA disabled and self-service password reset enabled. That's terrifying. Leaves them wide open to a lateral attack if they're using their outside email as their failover, especially if that one gets breached. Then it's just a matter of time when they realize that that's, I can reset a password to there. It's terrifying. So it is a good report, but there's still a swath of information in there that you can leverage just to show people, well, no, you might not think you're important enough to be attacked, and you might not be. The person attacking you doesn't know that until they get in, and they're not going to waste that opportunity. They're still going to go after you while they have you.
Mm-hmm.
This is actually a great opportunity to upsell for the P1 license or business premium, because then you can get conditional access and then set that up to force MFA and also do geo filtering. And the report will show you that you're getting all these from other countries. So therefore, to solve this issue, this is great to report it, but to solve it, you got to put in measures. So,
and that's what That's one of my biggest things that I like to try to impress upon you guys. Of course, we want you to sell SaaS alerts, but you should be leveraging SaaS alerts to also sell other aspects of your cybersecurity stack. We're not expensive, but we're super sticky. And it allows you to say, hey, remember when we first did your QBR and you saw all of these horrible things going on inside of your environment? And I insisted that you use this tool and this tool and that we took advantage, or we took care of your SOC or whatever you want to push. Look where you are now. And you can pull that same report 6 months later, a year later, and say that this is what I'm doing for you. See where all the green dots are and where there are no longer any dangerous things going on. That's what you're paying me for. SaaS Alerts really does surface something that otherwise it's kind of hard to quantify to someone who isn't technical.
I have one more request, Ryan, and that would be CISO's coming out with, I guess they call it the minimum viable security briefing document. Is there any document that, or report that we could get that would kind of tick the boxes that says your environment meets these requirements and these are not being met as an overall strategy to gain further trusted advisor role with this expiration? You're saying, hey, let us evaluate you. We'll do it gratis, and here's what we're finding.
I'm going to defer to Chip on that one. That sounds very cybersecurity or cybersecurity score-ish, and I don't know if we have a.
Yeah, so the closest thing that that I think we have prepared for that is a NIST mapping summary that you can share with your customers that shows how we map to the security standards from the National Institute of Security and Technology.
Oh, we lost him.
Yeah.
So I was just going to suggest there might be a minimum configuration recommended for basic security
for
and
both yourself and your customers, and get that at a discount.
You froze for like 10 seconds, and then Andy started in some more stuff.
It's all right. I'm sorry. I was just saying, Chip, what I'm looking to do is put together a document that says you're meeting these requirements. You don't have MFA. You don't have auditing enabled. You're logging in from different parts of the world. These are some minimum requirements based on your class of business or the regulations that you may be subject to, and to have that be an upsell opportunity in addition.
Yeah. So it's not something we have now, Andy, but I think we can certainly work to develop that and provide the data points and put it into SaaS Alerts as a report that you can schedule.
Yeah,
thank you.
And we've got Leron here, who is our VP of engineering, who's I'm sure taking notes on all of these great ideas. One of the other things that I'm seeing in the chat, people are talking about the business premium licensing, because that comes with the P1. And when Microsoft changed their, what I guess they're calling NCE, back in March, April timeframe, we came out with a lot of materials around the different licensing packages. And our belief is, when you're going to your customer with a business case of business premium, which is $22, plus SaaS Alerts for $3, right? You're paying us 50 cents or 80 cents, depending when you came in. And then that's a total package of $25. When you start looking at like an E3 license, and certainly an E5 license, we actually built out a matrix of the things essentially that are included that you're getting in SaaS Alerts that are actually very similar to the security upgrades you're getting in an E3 license. The difference is an E3 license cost your customer $36, right? So there's significant savings. We call it right-sizing the protection and right-sizing the cost for your customer. And those we have those documents available too, if folks would like those. So
that's all I wanted to hit on those pieces and just bring that up. I'm really glad I did. I appreciate the feedback. And again, I've got some homework to do to try to make that even easier for you folks.
Good stuff. So Ryan, I know I came in a few minutes late. I think you kicked things off, correct? And we're moving on to product update now with Chip and Leron.
Yes, sir.
Awesome. All right. Onward and upward. I shouldn't say upward. Onward.
Thanks, Andrew.
That came out horribly, Ryan. So.
Thank you. So I'm going to be talking about a new feature that we are in the very early phases of design. And Chip and I were going back and forth, and he wanted to call it reports. And I said, well, no, it's not exactly a report. And, you know, we're pretty technical, so we need to make sure that these definitions are accurate. So we started calling these things interactive reports, and specifically the Shadow IT report, which is something I think that we talked a little bit about last week. So I'm going to share my screen with you guys, and I need to make sure I apply sufficient caveats here, and that these are just wireframes. This is a very early design. It's not going to be perfect. It could be ugly, could have some warts on it. But this is kind of what the general design process looks like when we start these things off. We just kind of start spitballing these, and we're going to share these with you. And I'd love to kind of get your thoughts as we start looking at this. So,
I gotta say, Liron, this is so cool that you guys are doing this, because this, I think, is what makes it it's cool that you guys are that open to kind of sharing what your vision is and then getting feedback from the community.
Yeah, and it's, you know, don't be afraid to call the baby ugly. It's okay. That's why we're here, and we'd rather find out about it at this point rather than after hundreds of hours of code have been putting to making this stuff happen. So our view of the world regarding the Shadow IT report, right? So what is Shadow IT? Shadow IT is when your employees are going out there and they're connecting to applications that either the business is not aware of or you as a cybersecurity company are not aware of. So I love Canva. I go and I do things on Canva. But what if I have company assets on Canva? Canva were to be breached. As a cybersecurity company, you're thinking, oh, no problem. We don't have anything on Canva. And then lo and behold, your customer's information is now out there on the dark web. It's getting floated around. That leads to all sorts of problems, right? So how do we avoid this? So a Shadow IT report could be one way to do this. And I'm going to walk you guys through this, and would love to hear your thoughts, opinions, and questions once I review. So again, it's an interactive report, and I'll show you why in a second. So the first thing that we want to show you is the number of overall apps that are integrated. So you kind of get this pie chart, and you can see approved, unapproved, and unclassified. That's misspelled. That's what happens. Then if you want, you could click on these buttons, and it would show you the details on, kind of give you the detailed view of what that looks like. But then here, I have a list of all my users, and I can see that this person has 44 approved applications and 14 unapproved and 14 that are unclassified. So that gives me a good view as kind of, this is information that I believe that is important for you to know, information that you should have so that you can identify when people are connecting to things they're not supposed to and things that you're not aware of, so that you can set either Google policies or conditional access policies in place in order to prevent this from happening or to control this in some way. So if we scroll down a little bit, now we get to the interactive portion of this report. So we have two different views in terms of the details. We have application integrations and then OAuth logins. So let's look at application integrations first. This is the default active button, and we're going to show you various applications. So the sets of actions that you can take here are, you can press the green check mark to classify something as approved OAuth access for this organization, classifies unapproved OAuth access for this organization. So GitLab I want, Facebook not so much. And then once you've classified those things, it's going to update this chart so that those folks that are connecting to, or using OAuth to connect to GitLab, are now going to be classified as approved. So this really gives you a nice dynamic way of seeing what the kind of threat posture looks like from this standpoint. And then similarly, you would have an OAuth log, which just shows you who's logging into what and when they're logging in. So this is a log that shows activity, and this is kind of a summary table that shows you what they're logging into. You can classify these things as approved or unapproved in both of these tables.
Looks like Bill's got a question.
Shoot.
When you're approving these, is it writing back to Office 365 for approval, or is this just in here?
Great question. For this current iteration, it's just writing it here in order to give you this report, right? So in order for data to be useful, it has to be accessible, auditable, and actionable. The actionable is the kind of third step in what you're talking about. We have actually a person here who we're having look into the Microsoft APIs to see if this is something that's possible. We believe it's going to be possible to do, but we have to approach this in a kind of multi-phased approach. And this is just step one.
Gotcha. Cool. Andy, do you have a question? I see your hand up as well.
Yeah, I do. And that is for the, are we able to do like RBAC or role-based approvals so that we could, instead of selecting individual users, establish groups or classes of users and approve an application for that class?
That's a really interesting question, because we are actively working on RBAC in groups right now. And it's a challenging feature to work on, given everything that goes into it. But so what you're saying is you would want to call out a group within your customer and call them like executives
HR.
or something. Okay.
Let's say like HR, and they get Facebook access, right? Where everyone else doesn't, just as an example.
Yeah, it's a very good example. So in this case, we wouldn't want to just blanket. Well, what we could do, right, is to say Facebook is okay for Mike, but not okay for someone else.
Right, but the challenge then becomes, if an organization, let's say, has 300 or 400 people, and they probably have 5 or 6 people in HR at that point, and they might have multiple sites. How do we able then to give them a concise report that says, "Hey, executive team, the HR group has access to Facebook, no one else does," right? And here's how we summarize that piece. I'm feeling like we're basically trying to give something that is of high value to the executive team that says, here's where, and it might be the CISO that they have, here's how we're contributing and making a difference, whoever their security person may be.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea, especially when you're dealing. Last time I read anything about this, it's like the average, like modern business, every person has like 5 to 8 cloud accounts or something. So multiply that over the course of an organization of 100 people. And it quickly becomes very difficult to manage. So within our group functionality, I think it's a really good idea and something that we're going to take a look at, because I think the ability to create an HR group, exec group, sales group, engineering group, however it is your customer views the world, and then setting authorized applications for each one of those, I think would be very useful, save you a lot of time, and enhance security overall.
Leron, can I post something to the MSPs out there real quick?
Sure.
So when I see this in my head, and I'm just curious, do you guys see assessment, like a cloud security assessment, even if it was a prospect, and where you could, basically say, how do you compare to other companies a similar size and complexity in terms of from an identify side, what applications your users that you don't know are accessing that could be potentially harmful to your organization in terms of just sheer harmful. When I say harmful, I'm air quoting. Just what about time management? And again, from a shadow IT perspective, but I also see it as from an identify side. And you mentioned that, I was so glad you did use the term identify. We often miss application identify as MSPs, and probably the biggest that brought a biggest spotlight on this was Log4j. When Log4j hit, and you talked to a lot of MSPs, and you asked them, do you know what applications you or your clients are running that could have Log4j? Now, granted, there weren't SBOMs out there that had that information, but I just want to pause there and say, do you guys see that this could be used as an assessment tool? Don't all talk at once.
Where are we pulling this data from? Is this from the cloud app security in Microsoft Office 365, or
Yeah,
like
so
web filtering, or?
it's from the system logs. Basically, when a user connects to GitLab, Facebook, or whatever application it is that they're using, and they're using OAuth to do that, they're creating an integration between their Microsoft or Google account and that third-party application, right? And when you do that, you typically you get a list of, hey, when you're connecting, these are the sorts of permissions that you're going to get, right? So if that third party was to be compromised, could spell some trouble inside of your Microsoft or Google instance. So yeah, from the system logs.
Okay.
What do you think, Bill? Could you see your?
So I'm doing Office 365 assessments, and the one thing that always comes up is, are we allowing third-party apps to connect? So there's a setting in Microsoft where you can set it to where you have to administrator approve. And that's where I was going back and forth. You're writing back and forth and grabbing those rules from or those groups from Office 365, because you can create the allow list there in Office 365. And a lot of people, well, I don't care. Like if they don't integrate their, their username account, they can still use Facebook. It's not going to block Facebook from there. It's just going to block it from using the same credentials as this account. Where it comes up is like, well, they don't really care, but then it's also, there's new malware coming out where people are clicking on stuff and giving permission, giving different access to it. So you want to kind of lock those down. And without something like this or grabbing something from Microsoft, you're never going to know what people have granted access to. So
Bill, it also could lead into the conversation around, right, password management, and hey, if your people have access to this and those credentials get stolen, what other things could they then, nefariously gain access to? Because we all know most people use the same credentials.
Andrew, I just want to address Bill's comment, and then there was another question that came in at the same time. Bill, we're investigating whether or not we can manipulate that allowed list through the API, and if we can do that, that will get incorporated into this interactive report. The idea being, and why we're building this in reports, is that this is a report that could be scheduled and sent to your customer or your customer's IT team if you choose, and allow them to interact directly and approve or disapprove applications. There's another question that popped up regarding what happens if the user isn't using Microsoft OAuth to connect to the application. And the answer is we won't see it. I mean, if they're using a separate username password approach or private email or something else, we're not going to see their integration, if you will. There won't be a direct integration, but we're not going to see that activity.
Yeah, I think for the first version, I wouldn't worry about writing back. I think using this as an assessment and reporting tool, because I heard we're talking about like groups and creating groups. If you can just pull all the approved apps from there, let them set it up in Microsoft, and this is just the front end kind of reporting tool. And I like the idea of the monthly report going through, because then you see what new, once you kind of clean it up, what new unapproved apps are on there. Should we be blocking these apps? And then, you can create all those groups, because you're going to create them anyway in Office 365. Let's pull those instead of having in here. Then you're managing it in two different places. So as long as you have that read-only access, I think you'll be all right. And then version 2 or something, going down the road, you could add those integrations if they're allowed.
Yep, that's the exact path we're planning to take.
Bill, is like kind of a vCISO for your clients. Do you foresee that also forcing, kind of a governance conversation if they're not thinking in policy, and like where you can kind of expand that as well? What things are approved and not. Well, we never thought it. We don't have a use policy on that.
Yeah. For me, the question was for me?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. So when I talk about this to clients, this isn't even on their radar. Yeah. They don't understand that, we've just gotten past the battle of 2FA, and geolocation and using all conditional access. And this is kind of the next thing. And that's my fear, is the next thing is coming up. Someone creates a web app, which is really easy to do. And people always click, they give you all the rights, and they'll just click accept to get it going. But meanwhile, they can have all write access. Like if you read it, okay, they can get information, it's limited. But once a malware comes out that has write access, then you're in trouble. And without controls around that or locking it down, you're not going to find that. And I think this brings it up to the forefront to people. And it's people understand this. Like if I'm looking at it from a high level, I'm like, all right, GitLab, Facebook, these are applications. Why are we using that? That's going to be the question. And then they're like, call someone, why are they using this? So I think it's good just to bring attention to figure out where your data landscape is, because it's sprawling, and I don't think people understand or know that it is.
Well, it gets into a data flow conversation, number one, but number two, like I said, not to beat a dead horse, but like, do you foresee, like, because again, most people don't think policy, and can that get into a whole, kind of a consulting role for more sophisticated MSPs that can go, wait, what's your policy look like? Can anybody do anything?
Yeah, I think, and just kind of loop this all in. Cyber insurance are asking for information security policies, and then these things are going to be kind of added on. I don't think it's there yet. They're still focused on MFA and stuff like that. But if you want to get ahead of things in application control, because if you think about it, they're asking already now on every insurance thing. We're seeing application like whitelisting, blacklisting, but it has nothing to do with cloud app and cloud app integration. It's all on the desktops. So now, 2 years from now, it's gonna be different.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a huge sprawl issue, but it's also, again, thought leadership issue where you're like, again, if you were creating a wedge in a sales conversation between you and the competition, well, let's talk. How is your current MSP doing this with you? And they'll be like, what do you mean? They're not doing this.
Yeah.
Right. Because I can tell you right now, I mean, obviously we're building this report in, but right now there's 595 MSPs on SaaS Alerts, which means that there's essentially out of an ecosystem that's got 60,000 MSPs, you guys are in a minute percentile of people that can actually start bringing these conversations to your customers. The other thing is, Leron, I wanted to clarify a couple of things for folks in case they were wondering. So again, this is being done with no agent required, correct?
Correct.
And in addition, not necessarily specific to this report, but we should be delivering our first version of role-based access control, delivering that up with folks' turkey dinners at Thanksgiving.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, so Thanksgiving, in addition to your turkey and mashed potatoes, we should be also giving you version 1 of role-based access control.
So that's what you're going to be doing, Jim, while you're watching the Cowboys and Lions.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, I 100%. Can see that.
I'm diving into this big time. I can't wait for role-based access control. It'll be like Christmas.
Awesome.
It'll be a lot more interesting than the Cowboys playing the Lions, I'm sure.
You might be right there.
Leron, sorry for hijacking you. It looks awesome. I just got excited because I think this is so huge for SaaS Alerts users, customers.
Yeah, we're certainly excited about it. We've had some really good feedback as far as going to get this stuff from Microsoft and Google, because that does exist there. There's some technical hurdles there that Chip talked about, and that we have to make sure that this data is accessible based on early preliminary research. We think it is, but in our world, until you actually get your hands on the data, it doesn't really matter, because we've also seen in the Microsoft documentation things spelled out as possible, but when you go and you do them, the behavior is a little bit different. So we need to do this, and we're going to take this like we do everything else in a multi-phased approach, because it does start with surfacing the data. This is where you are today. Do you care that your employees are using their work emails to connect to Facebook? And then as an MSP, you can then educate them as why this is a bad idea.
Yep. Really good stuff.
That's it for me. That's all I had for you guys.
When you're doing these tests, what's the minimum license you need for this?
To go get the This OAuth data?
Yeah, the OAuth data, is that just?
Yeah, I think even free Azure should be able to get you this information.
Yeah, just business standard, even business basic.
Yeah.
Okay. Because I know they have that like cloud app security broker, their CAS thing that has some information, but you need like an E5 or something, I think, for that.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
You need E5 for that. Well,
yeah.
you can pay the $57 a user if you want for that.
Yeah, no. I don't be like, hey, this is all great. And then you're like, yeah, you're doubling more than doubling your Office licenses plus this. So.
Cool. That was awesome, Leron. So Chip, Ryan, back to you. When I sat down with you, gosh, a long time ago, it seems, but when we were in DC together, me, you and Jim, you talked about customer success calls you have about things that are commonly asked for misconceptions that people don't think you as SaaS Alerts do. Can you walk us through maybe some of those ones, and let's just get some feedback from the users on, do they know you do this, or,
Sure. If I can make that a slightly more interactive, though, is there anything that you guys on the call right now can think of that it would be nice if we did, and that you don't think we do, or that we don't do?
Can you give an example maybe to set the stage?
Well, so I've heard some frustration. I guess this is kind of leading. I think if this was a court, I'd probably get an objection for it.
Leading the witness?
Yes. So I've had some complaints about specifically the way that we're configured, kind of the lowest common denominator in our alerting. So for some of our more cybersecurity focused MSPs, they've said like, hey, this is really effing noisy. I don't particularly care. Derek's nodding his head. I don't particularly care if somebody modifies a bunch of files in SharePoint, and I don't really care if they upload them either. What I care about is downloads and deletions. And I'm getting beat to hell every time somebody uploads a folder full of stuff from their desktop into SharePoint, and that's exhausting. To the point where they've opted not to leverage that alerting, or they've completely muted it out, which throws in another thing like, well, shit, maybe I will miss something if I completely negate that alerting. So if anybody, obviously I know one person agrees with me, if anybody's not aware, the Respond module actually resolves that quite heavily. It gives you the ability to very, very aggressively modify the way that we set our standard alerts. You can go in right now as it stands in the settings tab and go ahead and set things to low if you don't want to be ticketed for them. You can then go into the Respond module and say, hey, if these specific scenarios happen, go ahead and alert me about that. So you can say, don't talk to me about all the SharePoint things, but create a respond rule where if somebody modifies 50 files in 10 minutes, or sorry, downloads 50 files in 10 minutes, go ahead and throw an alert at me for that. So that was one of the examples that I know a lot of people, when they found it, went, wow, that's going to decrease my ticket count. And now I'll stop getting yelled at by my help desk about this tool. Another one was around the prospecting. This is relatively new. If you want to use this to prospect, but that means you're thinking, okay, well, if I add a prospect and I have my PSA integrated, as soon as I add them, they're not paying me, I'm going to start getting tickets into my PSA. And my guys aren't going to know to not action those because they're not getting paid for it. So that's not a very viable option. If you haven't gone through that relatively recently, if you go and add an organization now, on the very first tab you get, after you give them a name at the bottom, it actually gives you the option to say, do not ticket into my PSA, to treat them as a prospect. So you can still get the reports, you can still see the information inside of the SaaS Alerts platform, but you're not going to get tickets created that your help desk thinks that they have to do something about until the customer signs on to that service. So was anybody aware of that? Bill, please, what's up?
I was trying to clap. That was good.
I like it. All right.
I was actually raising my hand.
Oh, sorry, Jason, go ahead.
Yeah, no problem at all. I am one of those people that brought that up. Yes, I realize the Respond module does give us that capability and we can tune things like that. But one of the things that I asked for specifically, and obviously this takes some re-engineering of the platform itself, and I'm not expecting it tomorrow or even next week or next year, but having, right now we have critical, medium, and low. Okay, critical, in my particular thought, critical is get me the hell out of bed, text me, call me, set fires, wake me the hell up. Okay, right. That obviously we want going into our PSA, we want responding. We also have high, which is stuff that I want to know about. I don't necessarily want it automatically integrating in my PSA, but I want it reviewed regularly by my team. And if it's something we need to be concerned with, action. The reason I'm saying 4 levels as opposed to 3 is low is absolutely everything. It's all the logins. It's all everything that we've filtered down. And I do want to review that sometimes, right? If I'm going in, say for instance, it's an account's been compromised, right? But it's not setting off any of the alerts because the bad guys in Croatia or wherever happen to use a VPN into Canada. So therefore, that's how they're getting into said thing. So it's not setting off any flags within SaaS alerts, right? But it's still going to be categorized as low because we have everything set to allow integrations or allow logins from Canada, say for instance. So the problem is it's low. There's so much information. I mean, I think I can only get half of the day's information from that before I have to run a report because all the various different logins, everything that's going on in there, right? So I would like basically, medium to be, it's kind of important. So we want to look at that, say for instance, repeated logins from different IP addresses, right? And then have a high, which is, okay, everyone start paying attention to this, but it's not, everything's going on, and then critical. So that's one of the features we've asked for. You're asking for feedback, therefore I provided that.
Please don't ever stop. I'm going to throw out one suggestion for the light the fires of Gondor idea that you had. Respond can actually allow you to send things via SMS if you deem them exceptionally critical. So you can add that extra step to make sure those ones wake you up and get you out of bed. And if so, you literally can go in and say, yeah, don't do anything extra. If you don't want to trigger an automatic reaction, just say, hey, modify the criticality and make this send an SMS to whomever it is you'd like to send it to. Should get you that piece. And then regarding there's a lot of data in low, we have in the last few months given you a little bit more functionality as far as filtering in the analysis tab, if you haven't spent a lot of time in there, where you can say like, hey, yeah, run everything that happened for the day. And like you said, it's a ton of information, and then click the drop downs in description or event triggers and see what you're actually looking for in those. But Chip, if you have any thoughts on somewhere between low and medium or not triggering a ticket, I'd love to hear it.
Yeah, you literally read my mind, Ryan. So I wanted to follow up and ask the question. If we introduced a 4th tier, now we have low, which I still refer to as logged events. That was the original product name until an earlier group recommended we changed it. So if we have low, medium, high, and critical, would we be seeking to drop the medium level alerts from hitting the PSA?
Jason, still there?
Sorry, is that a question? Oh, that's a question for me. Okay.
Yeah.
Apologies. I haven't had enough coffee yet, guys. It's been a very, very early morning today. Yeah, actually, the medium stuff, say for instance, somebody uploads 100 files. I have one firm that we're monitoring with SaaS Alerts that is a property management company. So they're constantly uploading 100 different pictures for when they do a site survey, right? They go in, they take all the pictures of the place after somebody has moved out, so they have a record of said things. That is constantly setting off SaaS alerts, right? I still want to know about it if somebody else who is not normally doing that role for that company starts uploading a whole ton of files. So that stuff I would like in medium, say for instance, right? But to the point of what other people were mentioning there about the deletes and that kind of thing. Yeah, if there's 50 files deleted, no, I'd like that going into high, but I don't necessarily want a ticket in PSA. I'm going to, have my team monitoring that on a regular basis and going, okay, is this something we should flag? Or is this something else? And then critical, I mean, obviously unauthorized logins, those kinds of things.
So let me unpack that a little bit more, Jason. So for the real estate firm that's uploading pictures, I assume that's not everyone that does that. Have you or has the customer considered setting different thresholds on the file activity on a per user basis?
We have, and every time we increase it, it seems that somebody else, that one site needed more pictures, and it flags again, right?
Okay.
So
something else
they're one that we've had to do a lot of tuning with, right?
Got it. Something else that I heard in there that it almost sounds as if you're a way to solve the tuning problem that you're discussing would be if we were to provide an option on each individual event that we create for whether or not that event, no matter what its classification in, sends a ticket to the PSA. or sends a ticket, period. However, that method is ingested. Is that an accurate statement?
That would be an alternate solution. Ideally, kind of where I would like to see this structured. And again, I'm not expecting you guys to rewrite the entire platform to accommodate. We'll do whatever we have to do. But the critical stuff, that automatically creates tickets. That automatically does all that. And yes, we can get granular with the respond, right? High is monitored, may create a ticket, may not create a ticket. Medium is this is something we need to know about. And then low continues to be the log of absolutely everything else. As I see it, when it comes to the PSA integration, part of the reason why we haven't done it as of yet is, and again, we can get granular with this, but as you guys know, there is a lot to this platform. We're monitoring a lot of things, and getting that granular takes a lot of time. And frankly, that's something I haven't had the time to do as of yet, right? So, critical, yes, set fires, have everything explode, send text messages, that kind of thing. And everything that goes into critical, ideally, I'd like to have set basically on blocks that this goes in my PSA, this goes elsewhere. My understanding now, without going in and granularly configure everything for the individual alerts, everything from critical and everything from medium is automatically getting put into my PSA, which is why we haven't integrated as of yet. We're reviewing the system manually. Actually, have you guys finished the Datto integration as of yet? I haven't had a time to be in the last, say, 4 weeks of meetings.
Yeah, it works great.
Yeah. Okay. All right. It is then. But
we're a Datto customer and we like it.
Yeah. Okay. Good. Well, I'm intending on circling back to it, but again, I don't want every medium alert going in and creating a ticket.
We did a ton of tuning. I mean, and I want to jump in here because the challenge that we ran into is we turned this on and we already have Defender, all the Defenders. We have some customers that are E5, so we do have the Defender for Enterprise, and there's alerting there as well, right? And so there's certain things that Microsoft's like, these are things you should know about. And so we always kind of took the default view of a vendor told us we should know about this, then it must be important. And so, we had sort of tuned the Defender stuff itself, and then we added SaaS Alerts and connected it, and then all of a sudden we had 100 tickets. And a lot of them were critical. And I was like, oh my God, the little fire icon, what am I going to do? And my techs who are not security people are freaking out. And ultimately what happened is we tuned it, right? But what I would love to see is that I would like for you to be okay, instead of this cloud app thing, because no offense, everyone's doing that and it's kind of annoying because no one's doing it really well. And the Microsoft version is insane. Augments is a little bit irritating. Once you go into a customer with a list of apps they use, it gets really awkward. So I think only IT people might want to know that. And in those situations, it's a co-management thing, and we'll just sell them a different Microsoft license. But where you guys could be really powerful is if you put intelligence behind some of this, right? For example, if we have a nonprofit that's probably similar to this property management company where they're doing a grant and a ton of files get moved around, and they're syncing OneDrive and OneDrive syncing everyone's desktop and all that stuff. So constant alert activity on that, right? And then they'll do weird things with we're working on a program and we just shared a bunch of files with someone in Japan, but no one told us they were sharing files with Japan. And now all of a sudden we have these alerts that people are opening files in Japan, and we're should that be important? It's nice because it's given us the opportunity to converse with our client where we call them up and be like, hey, do you know someone from Japan is accessing your stuff? And they're like, oh yeah, we did a thing, thanks for watching. But if there was intelligence behind this that basically would sort of assess the environment when we add a customer, and it would say oh, we've noticed these things, right? And the other gentleman said about if attacker comes in via VPN, right? Impossible Travel won't pick that up. Maybe there's some tools in there that might pick that up if there's 100 logins from 5 different IPs. But if you've sort of got some, because that's one thing we've discovered when we did have a breach, right? And that's kind of maybe where I'm getting at is maybe there's a system where you start to catalog when something did go wrong, and you talk to partners that had something go wrong, and you look back and use it as a flight recorder and go okay, this is where things went wrong for this partner. Let's package that up in a little rule set, and let's bring that out and put that available for other people. Because we did have a client that had an email compromise, and after the fact, we realized that when the account got breached, when you go in and look at the logins in AD, there's this little graph of the 7 days of logins, and all of a sudden it went straight up. And it was okay, humans don't have the time to go look at that, but a machine should have caught that, right? And so, but there's no specific technology that's looking at things like that to correlate a lot of these signals.
Chip,
Um,
you got to be smiling on the inside.
yeah, I am. Well, I first have an ask of Derek. I'd love, maybe not this call, but Derek, you made the comment that, when you first turned on SaaS Alerts, the world seemed to have exploded. And then you guys learned how to tune the product. And I love hearing that, because it's designed that way, right? It's designed to be noisy out of the gate, to pick up as Ryan said earlier, the lowest common denominator of an MSP who's doing absolutely nothing to secure their customers. So I'd love for you to share with the group, maybe next time, how you went about tuning. With respect to building some intelligence into the platform, we have specific machine learning projects on our development calendar for 2023, some specific new hires in that realm. One of the examples, you just hit very close to one of the examples that we're going to begin looking at, which is setting up conditional access policies automatically for partners based upon what machine learning is telling us, the known bad actors, or at least making recommendations and providing them on organization by organization basis, saying, hey, look, this excessive reconnaissance, if not attack, from a particular region of the world, it doesn't appear that there's no whitelisting entered in SaaS Alerts for any of those. Would you like us to automatically configure conditional access policies for this customer to literally just block these regions of the world coming at Microsoft? So those are the kinds of things that we're looking at for 2023 to introduce some interactive intelligence into the platform.
And if I just could add to that, we've given a lot of thought to this particular question, and I can't share most of what I want to share in terms of what we want to do with this respect. But, to your example, we know that a user is logging in 97% of the time from this geographic region. And so therefore, if they start doing things outside of that, these are the sorts of things that we want to bubble up to you and say, this is a pattern breaker. This is something we think you should look at. Is this okay, or is this not okay?
Bill has very patiently had his hand up for the past 15 minutes.
So one of the things you mentioned, conditional access. One of the issues that we've seen is, now that we had SaaS Alerts and it brought up a whole bunch of issues, went and fixed it using Microsoft's conditional access to do like geo filtering, locking all down. Didn't realize that, since we did this across our client board, how many people actually travel outside the US and go to these places. So we're making exceptions. So putting them in an exception group for certain times. But then we have to do that again in SaaS Alerts. So it's kind of the double kind of alerting. Is there any way where SaaS Alerts can then, you get an alert, then go back and test the conditional access, or markets like, hey, they're logging in from, Turkey, but it's okay because there's a conditional access pass, because that will help us then figure out, hey, if they keep showing up in the report, they're still there. One, is it a misconfiguration, or they're too long, but also, we can lower the severity of it because it's passing one of our rules that we already put in there. So just to link those two things, because as this happens, we're going to be sure tool brings up all these issues, and then we have to go fix them. We're going to fix them, but you'll still bring them up unless we tune it in your place and Microsoft. So to kind of cut down on that noise is, if it like learns, so that cuts out your learning. It's like, hey, what policies do you have in place? We're not alerting on those if it passes it. I don't know if that makes sense or not.
Right. It does. That's kind of why we built the suppression feature. We didn't have suppression in the original MVP that came out. Most of this call probably wouldn't know that, but it wasn't there. And we built it in response to that very scenario. Hey, we've got, we have customers who have team members who travel routinely all over the world, and they don't tell us. We find out because all of a sudden their login starts showing up in Morocco. And, how do we handle this? How can we get a quick one-click thing so that we don't keep getting alerts on that? And that's why suppression was built. So we could certainly look at synchronizing, if we're managing conditional access policy directly the way we hope to, we can certainly look at synchronizing that with the suppression feature for that sort of thing. So that when the alert does come up, If we hit it, yes, the conditional access stuff is automatically lifted. We could do that, you know, and synchronize it just to make less work for you guys, so you're not tuning in both places.
Yeah, because what will happen is someone gets a call, even if they do it perfectly, saying like, "Hey, we're actually going out of town next week," and you set up the exception. Someone on the help desk puts an exception. Then over a sudden, the night person that's getting called, they're getting lit up, and they're like, "Oh my God, something's going on." They don't know unless they go back and check. So, and then they come back to me and complain that there's too many alerts.
Yeah.
So,
Leron, if you're taking notes, I would look at that one, and we'll discuss with our Microsoft team, whether or not we can actually read those exceptions directly. Maybe
tied into this in a way that maybe to solve this in an easy way is we have MFA on, we have conditional access policies. And so the log of the sign-in will say if conditional access was triggered and if it was MFA or single. And that's really all we care about. We only care about single factor authentication logins because those are the ones we need to, like, that could be potential fire, right? Obviously, yes, there's ways to bypass MFA, but like if we've got conditional on and those things are all properly configured, and we do configuration as code for all of our tenants, so it's like synchronized across our customer base. But that's what I'd like to be able to see is like if I can differentiate the difference between a login that was outside of an approved zone being an MFA login or a single login, that those two would be different for us.
It's a very interesting comment that you just made, because one of the features that we're working on now is enhancing respond to react to account-based conditions. So doing what you said, I can look for an account login outside approved location plus MFA is off for that user, and then tell you when that happens and let you do nothing with it, or let you automatically block, or whatever it is you want to do with respond.
Sweet.
All right, Jim, I know we went a few minutes over here. We didn't get to everything, so we're going to have some stuff to pick up on next week.
We always do.
Our usual time.
Yeah, we always do.
Yeah, but it's great spirited. I mean, I just love the interaction. It's awesome. Mm-hmm. So Jim, want to close us out with anything in particular? I know we're back to our normal 1 o'clock time next week.
No, look, I love it. Like you said, this interaction, the feedback we're getting from you guys is phenomenal. It's just going to make us better and better for you. So loving it. Thank you. Awesome. All right. Well, till next week at 1 p.m., everybody make it an awesome day.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks, everyone.